Perfect. So first off, Steve and I have two huge thank yous for you for giving me this exact time slot. The first reason is, scientifically, this is the best time to take a nap. And so if everybody wants a deep breath, that's totally fine. I hope I don't make you fall asleep. The second is because the speakers before me have done all the heavy lifting about gig economy. Starting with Peter and his kid wanting to work here and in Beijing, Tim talking about decentralizing everything and breaking down the idea of borders, whether it's a country or an office, and obviously, Michael, what you did was incredible as well. Before I start, I really want to level set on what I mean by freelance. When I talk to my parents, they think I'm an Uber driver. When I talk to my friends, they think I'm a blogger, sitting on a beach working 4 hours a week. All freelance is project-based work, digitally influenced and generally virtual. And so with that said, let me just get into sort of my normal. Because I'll be honest, I'm not supposed to be here. I never, ever, ever wanted to work for a large company. I never, ever, ever wanted to work for Microsoft. I just wanted this world that I'm going to show you in 2 seconds to be normal. What I mean by that is this is purposefully written out the way it is by what is most important to me. At the top, we have work. When I thought of work, to me, it was things like Upwork and LinkedIn. I freelanced all throughout college. I did things like market research, which turned into business plans and budgeting. And then, when I wanted to go get my next gig, I used either Upwork or LinkedIn. When I actually worked, I then used collaborative tools, for example, G Suite and Trello and Slack. And so I was freelancing, I was leading freelancing teams, and it was totally normal for me to be working with people in India or China or anywhere across the world. When I thought about the second most important thing in my life, which is traveling, I had Lyft and Airbnb and Hotel Tonight. And so this idea of on-demand was just the way that I lived. And lastly, who knows what this is? What is it? Exactly. So even my dating life was influenced by the forces that ran freelance. Now, unfortunately, I had to learn that this wasn't real. And for me, although I was doing that normal thing, I really thought that's the way work was. And so after college, I went and I worked at the Big Four. And I hated it. I went from working at my favorite coffee shop with people all over the world to this crap. It was horrible. I had one office. I had one boss. I had one job. And if I didn't like it, well, I'm supposed to stay for 2 or 3 years? It was horrendous. Now, fortunately, I learned what was happening at Microsoft. And what I mean by that is in current state, we've done over 2,000 projects via freelance. We've seen absolutely incredible results. And instead of me telling you, let one of my team members tell you.
The problem was scalability. I'm only one guy, and there was a bottleneck in my office. And I had to fix it, I had to mitigate it. So I ended up solving the problem through freelancers, through Upwork. I was apprehensive at first, and when I get that way, I tend to pull back and just control everything and do everything myself, because then I know what I'm going to get. But that wasn't an option this time. And what I found was not only are there very skilled, high-quality workers ready to do the work, but they were teaching me things that I didn't know. They were doing things I couldn't do. And some of them, I was teaching them, so we're learning from each other. So now I'm going to India to meet with one of my top freelancers. He's an amazing talent, and we collaborate together, and I never, ever would have met him without the gig economy. I'm still amazed at the sheer volume that I'm able to generate using this model. And I haven't had to compromise quality at all.
I'll be honest, the coolest experience is meeting your freelancers. There's nothing like it. I've met them in airports, in cities I've went to. It is one of the coolest experiences. Beyond that video, let me tell you about my Tuesday night. I didn't have this prepared, to be honest. It was ready for customers, which if you know Microsoft, it doesn't have to look too good. But fortunately, since I had freelancers, this specific freelancer named Jay, who was an extremely executive level at Nike in terms of getting these ready, and I said, hey, any way you could do this PowerPoint in under 24 hours? Jay said, of course, I got you covered. Now, we like to say things like it takes 2 days to engage or things like that. This took me 5 minutes. And so that is the potential. And that is where Microsoft stood today. Let me tell you about our customers, because it's not exactly normal today. Our customers, and we'll kind of go over this as we're talking about, freelance isn't normal, it isn't real. What I mean by that are there's still a lot of challenges for the enterprise. Let me give you 2 challenges from a culture perspective that are kind of hilarious to me. When I was hired at Microsoft, I was hired with significant years of management experience. I'll be honest, I had 10 months of real work experience prior to that. And so my HR interview was comical because she asked me, Matt, you have 10 months of experience, yet you're telling me you have 5+ years of management experience. And I said, well, of course. I've been running freelance teams since I was a freshman in college. And so that was one huge gulp. Even today, a lot of times when I'm back on campus, a lot of times team members or people in the organization will say, well, Matt, you're just this jet-setting executive. Meanwhile, I'm a PM. And the answer is no, I just work wherever I want, whenever I want. And so there is this cultural balance. And the second thing, though, that I walked into, because at the time what happened was I knew Microsoft was where they were. I knew our customers were not. And so I wanted to be laser focused on figuring out why this wasn't normal. And one of the main reasons was this. Most of our customers, and you are probably going to have this today, whether it's someone who's in procurement or HR or product, whoever is going to drive this, they are going to have a blank white piece of paper, and you're going to tell them, hey, go create a freelance program that's compliant and at scale, and they're just going to have a white sheet of paper. And for us, fortunately, we had a woman named Leanne Skoltz, who, similar to me, was a freelancer, had lived in this environment, but was also an expert at Microsoft. And so she created this from soup to nuts, end to end. And as you can see, most customers can't do this. And we used all of our own tools and our own technology. And so where we sort of get to the end and what I lead and what I drive is this thing called the toolkit, where all we did was we took that process that you had and we curated it into the 4 main pain points. Those pain points are really one place for all your employees to turn to, one place for your employees and freelancers to collaborate, one place to measure success, and one way to automate. I'm not going to go into the weeds with that, but let me give you examples of how that comes up. With this first one of one place for everyone to turn to, the number one question that I get is how do I scale the program compliantly? What I mean by that is every single full-time employee going to use their corporate card and just go rogue? Or are there going to be controls in place? For example, we have things like a training video. We have an application form. How are they going to get that? Are they going to do it through email? So for us, we do have a SharePoint comm site that has all of those qualifications sitting on. The second one, in terms of one place to collaborate, how are you going to share files compliantly? There's such a fear that you're going to grant full wholesale access. And so for us, we had Microsoft Teams, which we were able to use guest access. And then the third one was, how do we measure program success? And so a lot of times procurement wants to make sure that they can look at their existing alternatives and say that, yes, quantitatively, this is better, faster, cheaper. Also, whoever you put in charge of growing this program needs to glean insights. For example, what are the skills that are coming most? What teams are adopting this most? And so for us, we did have Power BI, and we created a connector between Upwork and ourselves. And then lastly is the flow scenarios of automating those manual repetitive tasks. What I mean by that is as part of that training video, at first, people had to manually check that video, see who watched it, go email that person, send them a form, all these things to have things within compliance, and so Flow automates that. So I told you why freelance. Most important, what I want you to take away is that this is not this pie in the sky thing that'll happen in the future. This is here today. I am a freelancer. right? I sit and I dress like corporate, and I don't wear the suit and tie. Thank God I'm out of that world. But freelancers are in your environment and can help you today. And so we're here to help. Let me know how we can help. Thank you.
That's awesome. You know, we actually have a couple of minutes if you want any questions.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Microsoft? So how seriously are they taking the integration of the gig economy into the enterprise? Like, what is Microsoft really doing to allow this integration happen better? Because I imagine most companies here run Microsoft platforms, I would imagine, in a corporate environment, right? It's Exchange, it's SharePoint, it's all these other components. How can Microsoft make it easier?
Of course. The quickest answer is the Teams provisioning. What I mentioned by that is bringing freelancers into your environment. And so one of the things you're going to find is when you go to these freelance platforms, actually taking the freelancer and putting them in your environment can seem pretty tough, especially when you're dealing with one-to-many. What I mean by that is if you're dealing with one freelancer and one of your employees and one of your freelancers, that's fine. You can work through email, you can work through the platforms. But when you're dealing with 100-person teams or 50 to 100-person teams that have freelancers and full-time employees, things like making sure the freelancer is out of the ecosystem is critical. And so we've invested in resources to make sure that Teams has that functionality. Another one is the measuring program success. And so one of the things that we hear, because one of the options is you can use your current procurement source solution, you can use an MSP, or you can have this sit outside, which, Michael, I think you would agree and taught in your presentation, you probably want to do this net new, right? You probably want to have a blank slate so you can fully realize the potential and make sure you own that experience. And so that's where with Power BI, we've enabled a connector from the Upwork platform into your environment so you don't have to go use other things. You can have it next to your existing data.
Awesome. Thank you. Maybe one more question?